Hi, I'm Carol Salt, CA-Salt Consultancy Company. I'm SLCN Outcome Project for the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, but I also have at my own consultancy company, CA-Salt Consultancy Limited, where I'm an early years and primary consultant. So I'd like to give you now an introduction to the Children and Families Outcome Framework, which you'll need to have some understanding of to be able to understand the SLCN Outcome Framework and how it applies to and is used in the SLCN Outcome Programme. I've been working on developing and testing the Children and Families Outcome Framework now for the past 3.5 years with a group of children's centres and primary schools across the country. For more information on this, you can look at my website, which is www.casalt.co.uk. But basically, it involves a framework that looks at, it's got a children and centres element, which covers all services for children that access children's centres aged 0 to 5. It has a pupil premium element, which is useful for schools to be able to use to demonstrate the impact and effectiveness of pupil premium and how that is used to narrow the gap for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. And it has a children and family, it has a success element, which is around narrowing the gap for children around looking specifically at communication and language delays and social and emotional capabilities. The Children and Families Outcome Framework produces a report card, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. So, Children and Families Outcome Framework. My background is I used to be the Strategic Manager for Children's Centres and Early Interventions at Stoke-on-Trent City Council, which I held that position for 10 years. And as part of that position, I was responsible for the performance of children's centres across the city. So I initially started my work at Stoke-on-Trent City Council with the children's centres that I led and managed. But since then, I've taken it further. And as I said previously, I've been testing it with with children's centres across the country and in primary schools. So what does the Children and Families Outcome Framework help you as a service or as an organisation to be able to do? It enables you to take account of the determinants of health, education, child poverty, parenting and family support, and by mapping what the needs are of the local population in your area. Then once you've then looked at your population and you've got a really good understanding of your local population needs, it then enables you then to look to see how that fits in with the bigger picture. So the national policy and all of the current research that is out there in the field at the moment. So then we move on to the third part of the report card, which is the performance analysis section, which enables you to correlate and look to see at what activities and interventions you're offering as a service, what the quality of those interventions is like, and how that is improving and impacting on narrowing the attainment gap or narrowing health inequalities for children and young people. So the CFOF has been particularly effective in being able to provide an evidence base for Ofsted inspections, local authority annual conversations, advisory board and school improvement work. So in developing the Children and Families Outcome Framework, there are some key theoretical frameworks that underpin it. There's Bronfenbrenner's ecological system, Mark Friedman's outcome-based accountability framework, there is Boyle and Harris's co-production, there's theory of change, which is a methodology for planning, participation and evaluation that is used in the philanthropy, non-profit making sector and also government sectors to promote social change. And there is social return on investment, which is a principle for measuring the extra financial value, whether that's environmental or health or economic related, that in effect demonstrates for every £1 that's been invested, how much has been either saved in reactive costs or is a benefit, a financial benefit to the person who's received those services. So, underpinning theoretical frameworks. The first underpinning theoretical framework that we're going to look at is Bronfenbrenner's ecosystem. And to understand this is just in a nutshell, this is around looking at all of the direct and indirect influences that there is on a child's life. That could be, so it's taking the child at the heart of the service and looking to see, so who's directly involved in that child's life that could have an influencing factor on them, whether that's local, whether that's the mother and father or parents, foster carers, and then looking looking wider at the wider influences, whether that is school, if the child attends nursery, if the child is involved in additional multi-agency services such as speech and language services. All these will have an impact on the child's outcomes and life chances. The next framework we're going to quickly look at is Boyle and Harris's co-production. And co-production is is increasingly used in local government and community and voluntary sectors. And this is particularly useful in engaging local communities in decision making and ensuring that public services are designed to meet user needs. And also as well in relation to bringing multi-agencies together so that they work on shared outcomes and shared service delivery. Mark Friedman's outcome-based accountability. Mark Friedman developed a results-based accountability in America, which was proven to be very effective at looking at positive outcomes for communities and really looking to see what services make a difference to improving the quality of life. Over in England, results-based accountability has been translated to outcome-based accountability, because we do like to change the names of things when they come over to England. So outcome-based accountability is more commonly the terminology used in England. So how do we use it in the CFOF and how we use it in the SLCN outcome project is in the performance section of the report card, where we use Mark Friedman's how much did we do, how well did we do it, and is anybody better off, to be able to map how activities and interventions then translate into interim outcomes, which are the short steps of progress or change that children and families make on their journey to ultimately is anybody better off, which are our ultimate outcomes. Social return on investment is an analytical tool used for measuring and accounting for the broader concept of value, taking into account social, economic and environmental factors. And as I said earlier on in the presentation, you end up with, for every £1 that has been invested, then X amount of pounds have been saved in either as a social benefit to the person who's received the service or as a benefit to the state. Theory of change. Theory of change is a methodology for planning, participation and evaluation of a project to bring about a change. It's used commonly by charities, governments, non-profit making organisations. And to complete a theory of change plan, it shows simplistically how you move from actions, which are your activities and interventions, through a process of being able to measure those short-term outcomes through to medium-term outcomes through to ultimate long-term outcomes. And it creates a map where you can show what you do and how you move from an activity level through to an ultimate outcome level. The next slide is just an example of how a theory of change could work that you could spend some time looking at so that you can follow it through. So, Children and Families Outcome Framework. This is just a pictorial diagram to show that starting at the bottom left-hand side, the Children and Families Outcome Framework and the report card that it produces clearly demonstrates to commissioners, to service users, to service leads that they are involving the children and young people and families' voice in shaping services on a local ground. It also enables you to link your centre development plan or your school improvement plan and your priorities in those plans to be able to include those in your report card so that you can see how the small steps the small outcomes that you are achieving contribute to those priorities in your centre development plan. From your centre development plan, you can then link that up to either your local authority or your health authority strategic outcomes and their key performance indicators. You can then also as well then at the same time link it to regulative and inspection bodies or quality frameworks such as your Ofsted or your Care Quality Commission. And then it also gives you a framework so that you can then link it up to national outcome frameworks. So the big high level Department of Education business plan or the NHS outcome framework or the Department of Health framework. So Demonstrating outcomes. Where do we start? We start with the local picture in the report card, and that gives us a picture of what it's like for children and families in a particular demographic area, looking at population and performance data sets that are key to that population. So that's a little bit like your own little children and families needs assessment. We then move on to the bigger picture, and the bigger picture enables you to link your local priorities with government priorities and outcome inspection frameworks, regulative frameworks. We then look at performance analysis, which enables you to be able to build your business case for early intervention and grow an evidence base for what works at a local level to improve the lives of children, families and communities. So let's start with the local picture. This is an example of a report card from one of the children's centres for early learning and school readiness. And this just gives you a flavour of what sort of population data sets and performance data sets that we would be gathering to be able to show the local picture. Demonstrating the big picture. So again, the big picture enables you to link local priorities to government and local authority outcomes and inspection frameworks. And as you can see on the next slide, there is just a snapshot of early learning and school readiness's report card, the big picture from one of the children's centres that I've worked with. Along the bottom, you can see that it links to the theoretical frameworks that underpin CFOF. So the performance analysis. The performance analysis, like I said earlier on, helps you to build a business case for early intervention, growing your own local evidence base for what works to improve the lives of children, families and communities. It enables you to build an evidence base by looking at how much did we do, how well did we do it, what do we need to do better, and any data development measures which are gaps in data that you perhaps aren't collecting at the moment but would need to collect to be able to show and demonstrate an evidence base. Leading on from that, once we've had a look at how much did we do, how well did we do it, and is anybody better off, and what data development measures we are missing, we then looked to correlate that and to look to see is anybody better off. To be able to look to see is anybody better off, we have developed outcome wheels that are part of the Children and Families Outcome Framework. There is a set of service outcome wheels which are developed based on feedback from where I've tested the Children and Families Outcome Framework in schools and children's centres. So there is a set of outcomes relating to those, which I'm calling service outcomes. There is another set of outcomes that I've called children and young people outcomes, and they are adapted from the UCL Children's Centre outcomes, and that we can use them to be able to showcase individual case studies or to aggregate cohort data sets up in the report card. We then have a journey of change map in the report card, and that demonstrates how we can aggregate cohorts of data depicting population or performance need, interventions accessed, and then show the short term, the medium term and the long term outcomes achieved. Also part of the outcome section of the report card is a calculation on the social value that's been created as a result of the interventions that have been provided and the cost of those interventions over a specific period of time that the report card spans. The next page is how CFOF can help me in my organisation, and this is feedback. These the bullet points relate to feedback from developing CFOF in children's centres and primary schools, and feedback from the primary schools and children's centres over how they feel CFOF has helped them. Those statements have then translated into service outcomes, and for the SLCN outcome project they'll be referred to as service interim outcomes. The next slide just shows a journey of change and the model that we use for journey of change for CFOF, and on the left-hand side looks at attainment, achievement and school readiness, health and well-being, safeguarding, parenting and family support, and back into employment, which are the 4 report cards that sit under the Children's Centre CFOF framework. This framework is used in your SLCN report card and will show how we move from looking at a population level and looking to see what the population performance is and challenges are against those headings, through to the small steps that children and families make through to longer term outcomes, and which ultimately lead to improved outcomes such as long-term employment prospects, improved social and emotional capability, less likely to be in the criminal justice system, improved quality of life. The next slide is an extract from one of the children's centres back into employment training and volunteering report cards that sits under the Children's Centre CFOF, and it's just an example of a practical diagram of how a journey of change would look in a report card. Social value is the final section of the performance element of the report card, and this slide just indicates for the Wood Newton Children's Centre during their academic year 2013-14 for their early learning services, we could demonstrate for every £1 that had been invested in their early learning services, there was a return of £9.55 saved in reactive costs to children, for children and families as a benefit. So for more information on CFOF, you can go to my website, which is www.casaltconsultancy.co.uk, or you can email casaltconsultancy@gmail.com. Thank you.